data among sites, just because you really can't. There are rules and management barriers that don't let you share your data, but you still want to learn from that kind of data. So how do we learn as much as possible, sharing as little data as possible, or data that is still remains private, so that we don't violate any regulations, but we still use all these data that are physically separated. That's one area. Another area is, recently I'm doing a lot of, well, my group is doing a lot of analysis of medical type of data, trying to figure out what can we deduct from using NLP techniques and using also HPC techniques from very large repositories. We are doing also analysis of medical images to detect retinopathy. One of my students is here. She's doing a lot of censorship type of things for also large data sets, privacy issues. What else? I do still a lot of biochemistry work, so we still try to figure out folding of proteins. How do we do analysis of folding of proteins in a way that is called in situ? So before you send that data to storage, so can you extract any meaning from all these millions of simulations going around at real time, so that you can either modify the course of your experiment, or you can learn something as soon as possible, so that you're not wasting computation. That kind of problems.
Thank you.
So I come from a similar background as yours. I did my undergrad in biology, and I did the first years of PhD in mouse work. A lot of mouse work that I started hating it. Like, really. There's just no, I mean, I feel so bad that I'm so scared when you're doing experiments. And so I decided to change my career track. And I decided to do like computational biology. So that's how I ended up into Yuliana and working for professors who were willing to give me a computation project. So a couple of months didn't go very well because I wanted to do computation work, and I talked to this professor, and he was like, oh yeah, come on, like I have a project for you. So when I went to his lab, he gave me this list of like transcripts and IDs, and he wanted me to look at these and browse and count the number of exams and list in the Excel file. And I was like, that's not what I meant by computation. And so I'm just trying to build on computational skills now, like programming. So like as like you as like from some of that, and what are the specific advice that you have for me?
One is to remember you know more than that guy, because you know the difference between bioinformatics and computational biology, and for them it's all just, it happened in a computer.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be afraid to correct him on that, and say no to the project.
But I actually told him that I don't want to do this, and I, like with my limited expertise in programming, I wrote a code for him that he can use in the lab.
Oh, that is nice and naively sweet of you. Really sweet. But you write one piece of code for somebody, they'll be back for the next one. These days, I'm like, I'll help you hire somebody. Like, I'll do interviews for you, or I'll tell you, here's what you need to look for in the person who will have the skill set to do this for you. Do it continuously, or build something that you can build on later. But yeah, that was really nice of you. Thank you for advancing science. But, it's going to be common that biologists particularly, and this is by no means a biology problem alone, but it will be common that biologists in particular have no idea what computation is. They don't know what it means, they don't know what it takes, they don't know how to tell a good project from a bad project. So that's one thing you should do, is go ahead and form those opinions so that you don't end up on the bad ones. And I think an example of a bad one is one that cannot actually be translated back to experiment. If you're looking at something, they're modeling, and they've abstracted away so much of reality to make it run well, or to make it easy to code, then okay, now how are we going to walk any solution back to the bench? Because if it doesn't get proven physically in any field, it's just a theory. How are we going to go take this and actually learn from it? If they can't answer that, that's not a project you want to be on at all. It's just, it's a fishing expedition, or something worse, an ego stroking trick or something. Any modeling that they can't project a path to where it's going to get to experiment or validation, just stay away. And there's so many computational biology projects where like, we have all this genome data, so we can guess all these things. Okay, well, how are you gonna take those guesses and validate them? No idea, man. We have a lot of genome data, we have so much genome data. It's not really great data, genome data is not great data. So another thing you want to avoid is where you get called in as a computationalist after all the data's been collected. That's an immediate walk away for me. If someone says, hey, I've got this project, like, great, let's start talking about how we're going to gather the data, how it's going to be structured, how it's going to be provenanced, how it's going to be stored. We have to do that before you start gathering the data. And they are used to computationalists who have no idea how any of the biology works. So they just assume there would be no input from a computationalist on how they gather the data. They just save it in Excel. And then they hand it to me like, make something out of this. Nope, sorry, you forfeit your chance to have me make something out of it when you decided to collect it without any of my input. It has to be teamwork. And so the other job you have as a responsible computationalist is to understand what they do. I run a boot camp for biologists, for software developers, where, especially ones who are doing bioinformatics or computational biology, and they're like, oh, why don't you just come to my lab for 2 weeks and clone something. And then they come out with, oh, actually the software is missing something. It's missing this nuance that it didn't have before. And now I understand that when you're collecting this data, you really do care about which medium you grew it in, because apparently that makes a difference. So it's your job as a computationalist to understand enough of the domain about how data is collected, not just how it's processed or analyzed or what algorithms you put on it. And so don't get stuck in those projects either, where the experimentalists don't listen to you at all about how anything is structured or flowing through the pipeline. They just come with a huge sloppy pile of stuff at the end. That's also a stay away from that project sort of thing. And it can be hard, especially as a trainee, to assert that even though you don't know everything, you know enough to know that Excel is not the right substrate for this data. It can be hard to assert that. And what I have to constantly remind people is, you called me. You called me. You don't know how to program. So when I say this is how we're going to do it, why would you argue with me? I know why. I don't look like a scientist, so. Yeah. Well, we definitely need a biologist on paper, but when she shows up like, is this the one we got? And it'll be hard to assert your way past that. But I think in hindsight, that's the best advice I can give you to avoid frustration and to find a good project, is to make sure that you're working with experimentalists. If you can't do the experiments yourself, which is where I'm going, which is like, I'm just going to do it all myself, it's not ideal. It's better to find mutually respectful people so that when you say something about your domain area of computation and how it impinges upon them, that they go, okay. And then when they say, wait, your computation is skipping a step or it's abstracting something and it can't be abstracted, you go, okay. That's the best advice I can give you.
So can I ask a question that to sort of segue out of that? So I guess I'd like to sit in the perspective of the aspirational scientist, right? So not the person who is already seasoned and tried and true, but somebody trying to get their foot into the door, right? And so that type of assertion that you talk about becomes difficult, and in fact, probably foolhardy if before you gain that experience, you start to do that. So the question becomes, like, for all the panelists, how do you strike the balance at this early stage between being a beggar and being a chooser, right? You're trying to get your foot into the door, you're trying to understand, you know what you want to do, maybe, right? You have passions, maybe, right? You have interests, maybe, right? A lot of times in this phase, everything sounds interesting, right? And so I guess the question I want the panelists to visit is, for that first opportunity, right, or for the early opportunities, how do you strike the balance between, and is it practical to think I can step into a potential advisor's office and say, this is the problem I want to work on, it's very interesting, versus I am generally interested in the things that you're interested in, can you help me find a problem, do you have a problem for me to work on? What sort of advice and recommendations, and I think we have an assortment of different expertise in different areas, different experience levels, so I think this panel is well formed to address that and help the audience navigate the early phases of getting your feet wet with research or computation in general.
great to tackle that.
So I'm going to start on the side where you sort of know what you want to do, you're not completely sure. HPC, for example. HPC sounds great, but we've given multiple talks today. There are so many different areas of HPC that you can go into. If you're completely unfamiliar with HPC, a lot of the national laboratories have these summer institutes or summer research programs where you're not dedicating your life to this research. You're going to spend a summer at the lab or in the institute at the lab. And you're going to do some piece of research that is helpful for the lab, but you're also going to learn a lot about what that group or what that division does. And you're going to figure out, well, hey, this is something I really like, and this could grow into more opportunities. Or you scratch that one off your list and you say, okay, I'm going to go to a different university or a different lab because they do some sort of different science, and the HPC there is different, or the computing there is different. So if you're sort of undecided, the best place to start is applying at multiple places and just, I guess, trying it out. And spend the summer doing something instead of committing your entire graduate research on it.
And also, when you are going to choose your research topic, think about it. I mean, you are going to be in grad school, depending if you're going to do a master, 2 years, if you're going to do a PhD, about 5 years. It's not going to be the thing that you're going to do for the rest of your life. It doesn't matter that much. Do something that you enjoy so that you can put all the time and all the effort that it requires, but that is not going to be completely, I mean, it doesn't mean that you need to work on that for the rest of your life. It's going to define your career opportunities, so that's very important. When you're choosing a topic, you need to find a topic that somehow you can project that in 5 years is going to be still a hot topic and not something that just died. That's very important, and that's important for all technologies. If you notice what were the trends 5 years ago, everybody was into probably GPUs, and still they are super useful, but the buzz went down quite a bit, because now everybody can do that. I mean, it's not one of those skills that now is very hard to get. So what I would say is find a research group that you feel that you can work and have common ethical and research views. So it's important that you can communicate with your advisor in case you disagree, and that's going to happen a lot, because if you're going to be a PhD in a particular area, there is going to be a point where you are going to be the expert in that particular area worldwide, probably. Because in the PhD, everybody goes into their one particular subfield and they go deep. And there is going to be a point in which your advisor is going to be telling you nonsense, because now you are the expert and you know how that works. And now you can tell them, no, this is not that way. And it happens, I think, to everybody. And I'm super proud of my students when that happens to them. But you need to be able to be working with somebody that can listen to you and not just shoot you out. To tell, no, I know everything, you know, don't know what you're talking about. So that kind of personality, you need to assess early on when you are trying to find an advisor. You need to figure out somebody that is going to be open to you becoming the expert in that field, and that you can have some mature disagreement, because that is going to happen. But you don't want to be in a position where that someone is going to say, well, you're fired. Okay, bye-bye. It was 1 year until your graduation, but now you're fired, and I don't care if you don't graduate. So that would be, I think, the worst possible scenario. So those two things. The topic doesn't need to stay with you for life. You can change. Everybody evolves. And computer science evolves faster than most sciences. So you need to go with that. You cannot just, even if you want it, you cannot stay in the same topic forever, because it's just not possible. And work with people that has the same type of values and the same type, and that you can communicate well. If you can do that, you can be very successful in your research career, at least in the initial phases. That's very important.
Well, as you guys know, I haven't started exploring this one. But my situation's a little different, but I have been working on research projects. And I was very lucky to kind of have, met my mentor at the lab. And for me, I realized after working in industry and after having other jobs, like, it really matters who you're working with. Like, it really matters if you get along with that person. And it really matters, above all, that they respect you, you know, that they hear you out. And it's, to me, so with this OpenMP thing, I've had people, when I first started out, like I've literally had people tell me, like, oh, that's a joke, why are you working on that? Oh, that's just so easy, it's just fragment, right? And now, it's like the opposite end, because they're realizing that these many core architectures, like the KNLs, they need OpenMP to be able to work properly or efficiently with these scientific codes. So now I'm having, you know, this other side of like, oh my gosh, can you work on my code with me? And I'm just like, of course, but you know what I mean? Like that's what I mean. And like if I had a mentor who kind of just, you know, brushed me aside and was like, yeah, that's not a big deal. Like I would have never gotten to do like all the things I've been able to do the last few months. So I think that whole, what Trilce is like, that whole supportive nature that you want beyond like, you know, the technical side of everything. You're going to pick it up one way or another. Like if you're determined enough and everything. But having like that good advisor that you can really connect with at that level, I think, or a mentor, it's so, I don't know, it's like the best thing that you can possibly do. And that's what I'm having an issue right now, like talking to different advisors, and like, they're so nice, you know?
Love you.
But yeah, I think that's the main thing. But you just keep working at it and take chances. Like for sure, take chances. If you have something, that's what I did. I was like, this seems like a good idea, and I just kind of kept digging into it and creating profiles, and it turned out to be kind of a good idea. Like, you know, just do that. Just if you find a passion in something, those extra hours that you spend on whatever it is, it's not going to feel like, you know, a long time. Like I could spend 12 hours researching this and profiling and seeing how it works and trying to do it, and it didn't feel like a chore. I enjoyed it, and I got good benefits from it. So do that too.
It's true that a center level of assertion is probably not the best for trainees' health. In that sense, writing a script for somebody as a friendly overture is probably not the worst idea. Make yourself useful to people, be pleasant. That's a good way to get in people's good graces and get further opportunities down the road. But you should still be assertive about when something is not in your best interest, because your mentor is not necessarily going to tell you that. A good test for a mentor is, can you imagine them saying, I need this done, but this is not in your best interest. As in, I need you to stay an extra year and do this because I can't find someone else who's going to have your training. But you need to get out of here because it's time for you to move on. You've learned everything I can teach you. If you can't imagine them saying that, you need to find somebody else to be your mentor. Not necessarily a different advisor. You don't have to leave the lab, but you need to find someone else who's going to tell you when you need to personally override what your advisor's telling you to do. So grow some assertion. I think it's important because the aftermath of getting used to not asserting yourself, even as you build up the expertise to be able to assert yourself, leads to situations like I sat in rooms where I will say something, I'll be mocked for it. Literally, another person in the room will mock me personally ad hoc. I go, you would really think that because you're dumb. We leave the room and a bunch of people come up to me and say, oh, you were right about that. Why didn't you say something in the meeting? Well, because they're used to not asserting themselves. They're used to having advisors say, no, this is done, this is where we're going, and then just going, well, I think I know better, but I'm not going to say it. And it's so antithetical to science, I can't even with it. I'm so done. So, okay. Assertion in healthy doses, metered, prorated by your level of power and vulnerability. How about that?
I think I'm going to piggyback on your statements about finding a good mentor, because that was something that was really critical for me in my graduate school development. My mentor was someone who he's a white male, and he's very concerned about diversity in both in terms of gender and ethnicity. And you can see that in who he has mentored. He's always kept a pretty big group, somewhere around 10 to 12 students at any given time, students and postdocs. And it's always been a much more diverse group than the rest of the department. This is the mechanical engineering department at Stanford. And for example, last year, he graduated 5 women PhDs in a row. And I doubt that anyone in the department has ever done that before him. And having someone who's that committed to your success, recognizing that you are going to be out of the norm and that there could be a lot of pressure associated with that is extremely important. As far as I can tell, I was the first African American to get a PhD in my department, and when I talked to some of the faculty and staff, they kind of vaguely say that there was somebody before me back in the 80s, but no one's ever been able to name the person, so I'm going with it. And I felt a tremendous amount of pressure around that. I was told by a professor that my name came up in a faculty meeting, like questioning whether I belonged there. I remember sitting in exams, and if at any point I'm having difficulty with the exam, you know, and usually I overcame that and it worked out because I finished, right? And I made it, and I ultimately did pretty well there. But at that moment, just this fleeting moment where suddenly it's like, ooh, I don't know how to solve that problem, or I ran into a glitch here. I remember kind of looking around the room thinking, wow, I'm this professor's only data point on Black America. Okay, take up the pencil and let's go. But I had an advisor who really took an interest in me and went beyond the call of duty, and was also quite heavy-handed. There were times when I had to not listen to him. There's a lot of folks, you know, striking that theme. And there were some times when I'm really glad he was heavy-handed. My first quarter at Stanford, I fell flat on my face. I had the worst grades ever. And at the beginning of the second, and part of it was because I had jumped too far ahead. I was used to being ahead my whole life. When I was in 6th grade, they were sending me to take math with the 7th graders. And, you know, when I went to college, I went with AP credit, which at the time wasn't as common as it is now. You know, this was 25 years ago almost. And so I looked at the classes, and, you know, I was taking classes with like 2nd and 3rd, you know, year grad students, and I was a 1st year grad student, and I felt the pain because of it. At the beginning of the 2nd quarter, he sat me down and he said, okay, you're going to take this class, and that class. And I said, well, what if I don't want to take this class, that class, and that class? He said, you're going to take this class, and that class. And there are some times when you need that heavy-handed advice, and he didn't just do that. He got me into an office. I had a fellowship, so I was funding myself, so I didn't have to do research with a professor as a first-year graduate student. So I didn't, therefore, have an office, as the students who were research assistants did, but he got me into an office anyway. That got me a group to work with, to study with people, and that made so much difference. He even reached out to one of my professors the 2nd quarter and got him to give me a practice test before the final. And that 2nd quarter, I got straight A's, and the quarter after that. You know, so it really, really, you know, does matter for a good mentor. So, questions? Would you mind coming up?
My question is relating to machine learning. So I've done a bit of programming with apps and websites, and so I was wondering, like, what are some great materials that one could use to learn the basics in machine learning? I just know, like, kind of a high-level overview of what it is, and we're trying to, like, go more into that further.
It's going to depend a lot on your background, but the best investment you can do is start learning a lot of statistics. Because machine learning is, at the end of the day, inference. So if you learn statistics, it doesn't matter at that point how good you are at programming. If you can form the mathematical models in your head, then the programming will come later. So start with statistics, linear algebra, hopefully a little bit of calculus, and then you can go into machine learning. And there are many courses online. You can look at Andrew, and he's really good, and he has a course in Coursera and also many YouTube videos. And he's from Stanford, so well, he was in Stanford. But that kind of introductory material is good. But first, your statistics. Because then otherwise you're not going to understand when they are, I mean, if you have the statistics background, you're going to understand the course a lot better than if you go through the courses or to books, and then you're going to get stuck in the mathematical part.
So,
I don't know what year you're in, but the lab has machine learning schools over the summer. If you want to apply to, I have some pamphlets. Anyone else too? There's computational physics, machine learning, parallel computing. Let me take a paper. Data science, cybersecurity, co-design school, cluster school. Yeah, so you guys can talk to me about it with their friend club.
This is specifically for Sarah or anyone else who has any knowledge on this, but what was your strategy, and if you had any advice on how to build a startup? A lot of friends just tell me, oh, read this book or take this online class, and as someone who's been successful with it, I just, thank you.
Yeah, startup culture is sort of a problem, isn't it? The advice is very made for someone who looks not like me, and for someone doing something. I'm doing hard tech, and if you are starting up a company to do an app, you can get a bunch of laptops and some guys in a room, and your costs are pretty low. You pay for internet and hardware, and a bunch of people who are willing to eat pizza and sleep on couches, and that's the sort of return that VCs tend to, they like that, they understand it. Saying, I need to buy $250,000 of incubator equipment, and that's just for the prototype. That's a lot harder to incubate. Also, people were giving me advice like, oh yeah, read this book, and it's useless. Or go talk to these VCs. Well, those VCs are famously misogynist. News stories keep coming out about how they're like, how am I supposed to stand in front of them and say, give me money when I already know that they don't think I know what to do with it. So that's been challenging. It's been challenging to prove to people. I'm currently in negotiations with a funding source now where their big thing is, we don't believe you're technically proficient. So I said, well, I'm technically proficient. Who would you like to talk to who can vouch for this? Because they've already had a bunch of people look at it and say, yeah, it could work. They asked me to do a non-confidential call with my closest competitor, where I would explain the tech to them, and then they would tell the funder whether or not it was good to invest in. And I said no, and now they're like, well, we just don't understand your stuff. I'm like, yeah, there's no other way but for you to get my closest competitor, who, I hate to throw a label around, but it fits, they're total misogynists. The last 3 women I know who applied to go into that company got told, you're too ambitious to be hired here. You'll cause too much conflict if we hire you, and you're too bitter. There's no need for them to deliver any of that feedback, right? HR says, oh, we're not gonna hire you, good luck in your future endeavors, or we're going in a different direction. These guys went out of their way to tell the women they were too ambitious. And I'm supposed to disclose my patents, or I'm supposed to disclose how my technical stuff works to them, so that they can then tell someone else that I'm technically competent. So the advice in the books is not working for me. So I don't blame you for being skeptical of it. The best advice I can give is to look for the good mentors. Look for the people who will acknowledge that your path is not the same as their path. Even if you look the same, your path might not be the same as their path. It used to be a lot easier to become a professor. It used to be a lot easier. So for a mentor who's telling you, oh, you can be a professor, without acknowledging that it's not the same path, even if you are both white guys, that's a good, so what I've been having to do to get a startup off the ground is look for people who acknowledge that I'm doing something that is different from most startups, and that I'm doing it as a person who looks different from most person who startups. And if that person acknowledges that, then we can work together around the obstacles that all startups face, no matter who's doing them or what they're doing, and the special obstacles that come in when you're doing weird stuff as a weird person. It's just basically, it's a network search. It's still find the right people, keep them in your network, stay in touch, appreciate them, help them out, and they'll help you out. That's the only advice in common for all of it, is your network.
So if they were questioning your technical proficiency, then my assessment is that they're not technically proficient.
I suspect that. I have a strong suspicion, but...
If you go into research, your currency, or put it is publications. And that's what's going to really make the difference in your career in terms of advancement, getting tenure as a professor, getting promoted at a national lab. And some journals are much more competitive than others. And probably the two most competitive journals, the hardest to publish in on the planet, are Nature and Science. I'm thinking maybe, I'd like to think that right after that is Physical Review Letters, because at least I published one paper there. I doubt that I'll publish in Science or Nature over the course of my entire